Hey guys, how's it going? It's Dr. India White here on the Let's Get Gritty podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I hope that you all are having a great day. I hope that your week has been amazing. I know we've got holidays around the corner, and many of you in the classrooms, you are killing the game, rocking it, or wrapping it up with your students. And I know there's a lot to celebrate. Um, let's get to the show because uh, I want to talk about something, but before we get going, I'm going to make some announcements. So the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White will be featured on Swain Girl Media channel, hosted by Precious Swain on Firestick. In addition to that, if you're wanting to be a part of the show, please email me at india.white.123@gmail.com so we can get you slotted and talk about how you've been gritty. If you have a late another assignment coming up. Maybe you wrote a book or you're going on a speaking tour or you have something planned. Please let us know so we can represent you. All right, now. Also, please make sure you follow me when you get a chance. I would love your following. Facebook is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Twitter for my Big Ideas account is also IWhiteBIL. So if you're wanting information about big ideas and those amazing math textbooks, you can go there. Instagram is Indy238 and YouTube is India White 123 and TikTok is Dr. India White. So, all right. Now, also make sure you check out my website www.india-white.com for blogs. You can also find books, and there are some discounted. You can schedule me for your next speaking or coaching event and see how we can achieve wonderful things together. So, with that said, I wanted to talk with you guys today about grit. And I want to talk in the lens of education, in particular, dealing with your underserved students. I have had the privilege of doing a couple of keynote speeches, conferences, webinars, and I've interacted with so many of you rock stars. It's been a great experience. However, I have heard a couple of times about grit, that grit is uh, for a specific class of people, middle class, high class, that students of marginalized backgrounds, students in poverty cannot benefit from grit. And when I heard this, I just did not know how to really process it because remember, my background, I did come from poverty. I did come from being marginalized, at risk. I had every statistic against me, and grit was the catalyst for my success. Having grit and, of course, prayers, but grit was that was what really catapulted my life, my career, my work as a mother, my work just in any field that I've been in. It's through being gritty and having a growth mindset. And so I want to talk with you about that today. So today's session, I am going to title it Grit is for Everyone. Grit is for everyone. And I am so shocked that I have to talk about this. But I guess there is a misconception that grit is not for particular classes of people. Grit is this isolated idea or this ideology for people that already have status and wealth and, privilege, I guess, for lack of words. So let's talk about grit again. Let's remind ourselves, what is grit? Now, I've told you this a million times on the show. I will not stop. Grit is the passion and perseverance to obtain long term goals. Thank you to Dr. Duckworth, the queen of grit, who has coined that term for us. And the key here is looking at the word long term. The word long term is key. Now, Duckworth also talks about how grit is sticking with your future day in and day out, and not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years. She said that in one of her TED Talks. So, when you think of grit, who is not trying to have grit for weeks, months, or years? I think everyone, including our children, in particular, our marginalized children, are trying to access and develop their grit so that they can have a life that is one full, full of success. And we owe that to them. Now, I think that with education, the important part for us is we have to learn how to teach grit for our students. There are different levels of grit, different areas of grit. We have to teach them academic grit. What do I mean? You have to teach your students how to get organized. I know Avid does a great job with that, teaching students about deadlines, teaching students about getting involved in extracurricular activities, band, volunteering in their community, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, whatever they want to call it, whatever they want to do. Get your students involved, teach them how to finish their homework, teach them how to develop routines so that they can be successful. Further, teaching them behavioral grit, holding back, having self control, social emotional learning, how to develop your whole self while being mindful of other students. The Castle Wheel really outlines that for us. Also, financial grit. There's financial literacy classes that teaches our students about not spending everything, learning how to save, learning how to invest. What is the stock market? Teaching your students about balancing a checkbook, about how to, apply to a job, how to fill out a resume. Teaching your students these things so that they can be set up for college and career readiness is key. Now, we also need to be mindful and teach our students everyday grit. What does that look like? Every day, are you gritty? Are you being self disciplined? Are you waking up on time? Are you catching the bus on time? Um, you know, are you a leader in your classrooms? What are you doing to really develop grit as a person? Why? Because when the students develop grit, it's developing their character and it's developing their levels of integrity, which is key. Now, students from marginalized backgrounds they might struggle with that, right? They might be a first generation student. They might not have had something demonstrated to them. And that is where teachers really need to come into play when they are empathizing with their students and realizing, okay, my students might fall short in these areas because they weren't taught traditionally. I remember, I share this story every once in a while. I went over a mentor's house, and I remembered, I was not taught about tradition when it came down to eating dinner. And we were eating dinner, and I was listening to rap music on a CD player with the headphones back in the day. And I remembered how, unfortunately, it was perceived as being rude, and I was reprimanded for it. I got called out. It was like, India, what are you doing? Don't you know you're at the dinner table? This is rude of you. You're not engaging in conversation. You're listening to your rap music. It's really loud. It just doesn't make sense. But I was not taught proper etiquette when eating dinner with friends and family. So I think that in a similar context, when we are in a classroom with students or we're dealing with students every day, I don't care if you're an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, whatever, a parent, guardian, whenever you're dealing with students, it's teaching them that behavioral etiquette. It's teaching them everyday grit so that they can be successful in life. And then, of course, going and teaching grit for success. So it's great to get your college education, but we know that that college degree can just sit there. And if you can't land a job, I don't know what to tell you, right? So we have to now teach our students how to then transfer from that college and career readiness, that when they're now ready for a career, how do you have proper workplace etiquette? How do you have proper etiquette when you're in interviews? How do you connect with others in the community that can open up doors for you? How can you network with people if you're starting a business? How can you network? How can you get into that? How do you get into philanthropy? There are so many different things that we can teach students, and it's going to take grit. The world it can be very competitive and it can be a mean place if students aren't set up for success. So those are some things that we have to consider. And I'm telling you this now because developing a gritty mindset, this is key. It's not about a student's background. It's about the fact that you just have a student in front of you, no matter who it is. See all of your students as pliable clay that you have the opportunity to invest in. You have the opportunity to help them to develop a growth mindset, gritty mindset, so that they can be successful in life. Now, I just talked about growth mindset. Dr. Carol Dweck, thank you for her work. She talked about growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. coming to the table with marginalized students, students in poverty, and we think, oh God, that student, they just can't get it together. They don't have the resources, they don't have the supports they need. I just highly doubt it. I remembered, this makes me think of a situation in my personal life where I saw somebody write about me in high school. I was a junior, freshly homeless. And I remembered somebody writing and saying, India is most likely to drop out of school and be pregnant uh, by the age of 16. It was something like that. So they basically deemed me to be, predicted that I would be a teenage pregnancy because I was homeless and I was an at risk youth and I was a, marginalized student of a diverse background. And I remembered seeing that it was like a fax machine or a printer. I remembered seeing someone writing that about me. And the way it made me feel, it was like everything just fell to the core of me. Like the pit in your stomach, falls down like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. And it was like, oh my gosh, is that going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, or am I going to do something to kind of counteract what I just saw somebody say about me? So I decided to counteract that and to do opposite. And grit was the catalyst. It was a driving force to help me to continue to move forward and to make responsible decisions. As I was developing grit and developing character, developing my academic status, as a student of higher studies, it was that one experience that I remembered. I can't allow that to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when you're dealing with students and students of marginalized backgrounds, it can be very tempting to say nothing's going to come out of the student, and it's very tempting to throw those students away. But I'm here to tell you, not only as a testimony, but as lived experiences as well, with wonderful students that I've encountered as well, that some of the students that have the short end of the stick that you're ready to give up on are going to be some of the most successful people in society, because they are going to develop grit and they will be non-stoppable. They will be unstoppable. And so I want to encourage you that before you throw anybody away or assume through a fixed mindset that they can't accomplish or achieve or become anything, to think twice, because you never know what will come out of those students. And then, of course, developing that growth mindset. What conversations are you having mentally about your students? What subjective outlooks are you having that might need to be revisited and readjusted? Something to work on, just to make sure that, various hindrances or even biases or various opinions or various things that you've heard from other teachers don't stand in the way. Sometimes our teacher friends mean the best, but they can really put kids in a box with what took place the year before. So sometimes teachers would run to you with with their roster, and say, hey, listen, I know you've got such and such. Let me tell you, they're a work of art. They're a piece of work. You're going to have to, keep the administration on them, because, oh my gosh, they're not going to do. So I want to encourage you, whenever you hear that, and count it as a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. I also want to encourage you, um, if you're tempted to suspend students or to write students up, especially students of marginalized backgrounds, I want to encourage you to do what you can to implement as many restorative practices, positive behavior intervention systems, whatever you can, to connect with that student, to build relationships, and to really know those students so that you can connect on another level. And then you can also develop growth mindset in those students, as well as developing your own growth mindset. So that's some stuff that I want to leave you with that, regarding a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. I also think too, whenever you're dealing with a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, that it's just really key to always be forward thinking, to remain optimistic. I think it was like Bill Gates or someone just put an article out on some of the successes to life. One of the key successes is having a balance between optimism and pessimism. Now, the balance, when you're dealing with students, I can see this as, if a student comes to you with a level 1 on a standardized test, all D's and F's, not doing well, a balance would be to see, okay, the facts are in front of me. I see the student is not performing, but with my expertise, with my instructional practice, as I know I'll be able to get to, build relationships with these students, I am sure that the student will show gains and growth in my classroom. And I want to encourage you with this. When you're teaching marginalized students and students of diverse backgrounds, and you are of European descent, or you're just not of their background, and so there's a cultural disconnect, and there might be a fear of connecting with that student because you're not quite sure, one, if you'll be received, and two, you don't want to say anything to get you canceled or to offend anyone, so you're kind of stuck. I want to encourage you, and I want you to disrupt any thought processes that would bring up fear, to make you think that this child might be a threat or this child doesn't like you. I want you to really kind of think about yourself as a human being, as a person, before a teacher. I want you to think of how you've made relationships with people. And I want you to remember your value and your worth. I want you to remember how cool you really are, right? I want you to remember how you have been able to be a social butterfly, or you've been able to connect with people and get really deep in your connection with people. And I want you to also say to yourself, you know what? If I can do that with adults and others in my social, you know, circle, why can't I do it with marginalized students? I want to challenge you on that. Next time you have a child that looks completely different, comes from a completely different background, and you're like, oh my word, I don't even know where to start. I just want you to be yourself. And I want you to work on developing, your grit, developing their grit, developing your relationship with that student. Um, don't count yourself out, and don't put that gap of that distance between you and that student because you're thinking, oh God, I have nothing in common with them. I'm not sure we'll be able to connect. I really want you to do your best to try to build and establish a relationship with those students, because I think that something beautiful will definitely evolve out of it for you. Now, I want to also talk about students of marginalized communities, and I want to first highlight them because many students of diverse backgrounds are very talented, with music, sports, intellect, so many different levels and areas, right? But sometimes we fail to tap into those areas because we're so busy looking on the outward surface that we can't see the gem inside. We can't see the talent and the beauty inside. And so then we just chalk it off as, oh, there's nothing we can do. So, with that said, I want to go into this quote and kind of talk about this. Duckworth talked about, if you can develop grit, students that had more grit developed in them achieved more than students who merely had talent. So I bring this up because if you already have talent, you already have a bonus, right? So a lot of marginalized students are coming to you with talent. You don't think so? Ask some of them to, play a song, or to create a song, write a poem. Ask them to show you a appropriate dance, or ask them to show you what they're working on YouTube or on TikTok, what they've got going on, and you will be amazed of how talented these individuals are. So, with that said, I want to challenge you then to find a way to cultivate their passion in your math class, in your class, your education class. Find a way to cultivate their passion towards your subject area by being interested first in who they are and what they're passionate about already, and what they're already talented about, are talented in. So if a student is great at sports, and I'm teaching them math, I'm going to find a sport that they can relate to and then tie that into um, the math class to build their passion and cultivate their grit in my class during that lesson, if that makes sense. So, speaking of that, cultivating and developing grit, I looked up some research for y'all. I will. And Ashley Elizabeth is a motivational speaker. She's also like she has like her own practice, and she helps with like mindset and things like that. She talked about developing grit, and she said the first point was to practice, practice, practice. And I thought that was great that she said that, because you know when you have that resilience, that happens as you practice, as you build. It doesn't happen overnight. I mean, looking at a bodybuilder, looking at someone trying to lose weight, sometimes it's going to take more than just getting on a particular um, keto diet plan, or Ozempic, or whatever. It's going to really take practice, practice, practice to accomplish your goal. If you're trying to lose weight, or you're trying to get fit for whatever, it's going to take practice. And so I thought this was very interesting that she said practice. She also said don't give up. And that's that resilience, that's that perseverance, right? To the end. And, in my study, I told you that, the key indication of grit, that was the key indicator to make sure that students did not drop out of school. It's not giving up. And then even, side note, this is even for people, in the higher education space, marginalized educators and scholars that are trying to finish and pursue a career, a degree, and they're tempted to, to quit. They have to just not give up. Also, connecting with your purpose. This part is pivotal and very key because if you can connect a student with their purpose, or even you as an educator or as a leader with your purpose, then your purpose is going to be what's going to help you bounce back, recycle the failure, and recycle the times that you didn't meet the mark before. Because you know your purpose, you'll be able to go at it again fresh. You'll be able to press the reset button, the start over button, and just go again. The key here is you never stop until you achieve it, until you accomplish it. That's the key of grit. You can't stop. There's no I'm done button, right? You might recycle yourself. You might recycle. I mean, there's been times, even with weight loss, um, this is very relative in my life. When you're trying to lose weight, you might lose 10 pounds and then gain 5, or lose 10 and then gain 20, and then you're just on the scale constantly trying to figure out what works for you. But the key is never stop. Go at it again. You might have slowed down in your workout, routine, your regimen, whatever. You might have been working out for an hour straight, and then you cut it down to 30 minutes cuz life happened, and then you stopped. But then you picked it back up, and then you got, 15 minutes on the treadmill, or you did 5 minutes of weights. Whatever you do, don't stop. That is the key when you're trying to develop grit, and even students looking at the education space now. You have to teach and train your students how to practice grit, how to practice not giving up, how to continue with productive struggle when it gets tough, and the procedural fluency is there, how to continue to move forward when they feel like giving up, when they throw the pencil, when they, close the book or slam the book on the desk, how to help them to reset, recharge, and go at it again is key. Now, I want to talk about a study that I found on eric.ed.gov. The name of the study was, I'm going to pull it up for y'all. I'm not going to pull up the study, I'm going to pull up the name for you. Grit and Agency, a framework for helping students in poverty to achieve academic greatness. Written by Anindya, wow, Kundu from New York University. I need to reach out to them, especially because her name is like, it's really neat. It's Anindya. So it's Anindya. That is so pretty. Um, yeah, so I'm gonna try to reach out to her. But anyway, so she wrote this, and basically she has some wonderful bullets in this article, by the way. And the name of the article, again, for you guys that are like, what's that? It's Grit and Agency, a framework for helping students in poverty to achieve academic gain or greatness. Okay, so she spoke and said that poor students can greatly benefit from support systems that enable them to think critically about their disadvantages and act correctly to overcome them. This can increase their agency and grit. She did mention, too, that just having a grit framework alone might not be enough support. You're going to need basically a system to go with the grit framework that will enable your students to think critically about their disadvantages so that they can correctly overcome them. Now, listen, to act correctly to overcome them is key. Because if you know that you're already at a disadvantage, she talked about some of this in her article or in her work. She spoke about how when a student is already at a disadvantage, the system is kind of not really for them, right? They don't have resources. They don't have access to technology. They don't have access to, updated textbooks or, whatnot. So they're already at a disadvantage. So how do you help bring the kid up to par? Well, you've got to have them be more proactive. Yes, they're going to have to be a little bit more gritty than the status quo. Yes, they will, because they have these disadvantages that they also have to overcome. So she spoke about teaching this to students so that they can become more gritty, and then also increasing their agency, increasing their ability to ask for help, increasing their sense of advocacy for themselves, self advocacy. And then when you're doing that, it's also enhancing that self efficacy piece, which Bandura spoke about as well, which that's wonderful research if you haven't gotten into that. So, those are some things that she spoke about, how they can benefit from support systems. And, it's not enough to just say, oh God, I hope Johnny can eventually get his stuff together. No, we've got to come alongside Johnny and support him. We've got to cultivate that grit through accommodating for them, advocating for them, being a source of agency for those students that are dealing with challenges that are bigger than life. So, with that said, guys, you know, in conclusion, grit is for everyone. It is not just for the elite and the wealthy and the well off. It is for all students, all people. Everyone walking needs grit. Everyone that has accomplished anything unique in their life has done it through grit. And so, with that said, I want to continue to put that message out there. Please help me spread this information so that people that are thinking that grit is not needed um, can be informed appropriately, because grit is definitely a source needed for success for your students and for educators alike. So, with that said, thanks so much, guys, for tuning into the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. It's always a pleasure to come on here with you. For you guys that will be at future conferences, I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to mingle with you, to talk with you about grit. Some of you will want the workbooks, the grit workbooks. I'll make sure to bring those. I'll make sure if you're needing professional development to be available for you, just inbox me or, send me an email at india.white.123@gmail.com so that we can, further our conversations. If you're needing me to come into your school and work with you, whether it's a PLC, if you're needing some other type of professional development, or you're wanting me to be a keynote or a speaker at one of your future conferences, I will be here for you. So, with that said, I appreciate you all tuning in. And again, some other reminders. The Grit podcast, it's going to be featured on Swain Girl Media, which is on Fire Stick. So please look out for that. Also, if you have not followed me yet on social media, there are my handles again. Facebook is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter, my Big Ideas Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Or wait, no, that's my personal Twitter. I apologize. That's Indie Speak and Teach. And then, of course, Instagram is also Indie238 for big ideas. And then my YouTube channel is India White 123. And my TikTok is Dr. India White, which I am still developing and I'm super excited about, even though my children crack on me because I don't get that many likes or hearts. And so that's some information there. Also, please check out my website. If you've attended NCTM, NCSM conferences, I do have a special link on there for a discount for the equity book. And then if you've also attended the CMC South, I have a link on there as well, or a blog on there where you can go and get discounted grit workbooks for students and teachers. So, with that said, guys, I'm so happy to join you. Please continue to cultivate grit in students, continue to cultivate grit in each other. Do not give up, do not stop, and do not feel that grit is not for everyone. Have a conversation with people about it. And I encourage you to take away the uh the stigma of grit, or the nonchalant usage of the word grit, where people don't even really understand what it is conceptually, but they're just throwing the word around because it's like a fad. I want to encourage you to please, please, please do all that you can to help spread this truth of what grit really is, and to cultivate grit in every student, family members, colleagues or whatnot, so that we can develop a gritty community together. So, you guys take care. Have a fabulous, fabulous day. Enjoy your weekend. And